We are the Lab Doctors. I'm Amanda.
I'm Dorothy.
And I'm Zhao Yong.
We are biomedical researchers who realized we still have a lot to learn about science.
So why not join us on this quest?
Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of the Lab Doctors. We have a Today We Learn episode where we science our way through answering questions in the first part and regroup and discuss after doing our research in the second part. Heads up, the audio may not be as good for this episode as this was an early recording as well. So let's get started.
And today's question that we're very curious about is, do identical triplets exist? But before that, I think we have to explain how twins come about.
So the way I remember, I don't know, secondary school science, I guess.
Is it secondary school?
I mean, in Singapore, it's secondary school.
I don't know if Malaysia is secondary.
I don't want to sound dumb. I swear I'm not. But I remember nothing. So this is good. This recap is good for me too.
So from what I do remember is that when a fertilized egg forms, from a sperm and an egg, fertilization.
Yes, that's fertilization.
Fertilization. So when an egg is fertilized, it divides, right? And into two different cells. And so this continual division of cells would make an entire human person eventually. For identical twins, the cells might individually implant and form two different humans. And that's why identical twins exist.
From the same starting
point, fertilized egg. Yeah, and so they have the same DNA, they have the same features.
Do they have the same fingerprints?
So their fingerprints are not the same because how you get fingerprints are from the amniotic sac environment.
Oh.
And that can be different even in the same, womb, in the same pregnancy.
Because it's a different...
Yeah. It's just a different environment in general. Yeah. So fingerprints, even twins have different fingerprints, but they would have the same...
They share
genetic,
the same DNA.
or very similar. So, eventually they would accumulate differences, but at the starting point.
Okay, so that's identical twins, right? So what are fraternal twins?
Fraternal twins are two different, so the mother might release two different eggs at the same time. It just occurs, spontaneously, randomly. Sometimes it just naturally occurs. And so fraternal twins are when two different eggs are fertilized by two different sperms and you get two different humans that are genetically different but within the same pregnancy because they are fertilized and born at the same time.
Yes.
So in theory, that's how fraternal triplets exist, right? Means more than one egg or more than two eggs, are released.
Yeah.
So why are we so adamant that, or not adamant, why are we curious that identical triplets, do they exist or do they not?
So like I said, when a cell divides, it usually divides into two and the two cells will divide and form four cells, or rather each cell division only two daughter cells appear, right? From one single parent, only two daughters appear. I don't think it occurs that, one parent cell can produce three different cells or four different cells. I'm not very clear about that.
No, it's mitosis, right?
Yes,
cell division.
cell
Mitosis
division.
is basically cell division.
Yeah. I thought,
And it always, one cell gives you two cells.
so I thought when you split from the first cell, so I'm for the idea that potentially there's an identical triplet out there. I don't know, we have to do our research. But when the cell, when the very first sperm and egg meet and they form one cell, and it divides into two, maybe there are two different events already. They are individuals, you can call it. And so maybe one of them out of the two might spontaneously divide again and form another human. I mean, that's with my very limited knowledge.
So I guess the question is, what triggers, the different implantations? Whereas in other pregnancies, it's just it just continues to grow and implant as a single cell. Or a single entity, not a single cell.
I have no idea. Are we even biologists? Are we even science?
But we don't specialize in developmental biology, so...
We're trying, guys. We are trying.
But I agree that identical triplets, there is a potential for it.
Somewhere.
Yeah, but I'm a bit darker.
I mean, theoretically, it should be possible.
It should be.
Darker how? What do you mean?
So I'm thinking babies, how babies get resorbed in vitro, in utero.
Oh, those people who are one person, but then they're I always felt like I had a twin, and it's because they ate the twin in inverted commas.
Well, Yeah, 8.
But result, I guess, is the
Result. Explain
phenomenon
result,
that
please.
happened.
Yeah, so it's like the baby that is, developing that's slightly stronger might just take up the baby that it's developing that's weaker
The nutrients, like competing for
as
nutrients.
nutrients.
So that's not a myth, right? It happens.
I
think it
so.
happens.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is there were initially, okay, so from one cell there's 2 cells, and then from those 2 cells it divided again, and so 2 cells give rise to 4 cells, and 4 cells implant differently, so there should be 4 individuals.
Yeah.
But 3 of them are stronger, and
Yeah.
maybe one of them. It doesn't have to be.
Doesn't.
So that's how identical triplets
Yeah.
exist.
Oh, that's possible, I think.
Yeah. But it's way darker.
Yeah, way darker
that's dark.
than the
Darker.
2 cells are separate entities. But yeah, we know who is the dark one in this trio.
Well.
So if it's that way, like, so from 1 cell it becomes 2 cells, or 1 cell it becomes 4 cells,
Yeah.
and then like maybe 3 cells in the end. Will more than 2 babies, like more than 2 twins, be less identical?
No.
So for example, so if
What?
there's identical triplets, so there are 3 babies at the end of the pregnancy, would
Does
they
it
be
like-
less identical than the twins, like 2 babies?
Like, does it dilute in inverted commas the genetic
Yes.
DNA, the similarity?
Oh,
between
so
each
like
other?
genetically, are
Genetically,
they
are they
dilute?
less identical?
You're less identical.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Why?
Because in mitosis we know like the genetic material, basically in cell division the genetic material doubles, and then when it splits into 2 cells it's back to normal.
Yeah.
So same thing like when the quadruplet form, it's like it's just doubling again and then like back to normal again.
Yeah.
So they'll always have the same amount of DNA in a single person.
Yeah.
And therefore they will be the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
they're identical no matter how many twins there are. So how many twins can there be though? And I shouldn't call it twins. How many babies can there be? Like, what's the limit? 100?
Theoretically.
Theoretically. If what is the limiting factors?
You mean
Eventually,
Eventually,
the space in the womb, like how
Yeah.
much the
Yeah.
mother can carry.
what is it? It's like 8, right?
Is it 8?
In Singapore, not Singapore,
in
in the
Singapore.
world,
I feel like it was
I
8.
feel like
I thought it was 6.
I'm not.
I know
like
there's
it
a
was
variety show where there's like 8.
Like, isn't it John and Kate plus
Oh,
8?
John and Kate plus 8, but
But
that's
I
like
thought it was like twins,
twins
and
and
then
then 6.
sextuplets. But I think it's because of IVF, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
it's
That,
IVF.
so they're a lot of them are different. They're not identical.
They're
twins.
fraternal.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
IVF, long form is in vitro,
Vitro
fertilization, where the term in vitro means
In glass.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Glass,
from
vitro
a
is glass.
test tube or
Yeah.
artificially inseminating
Yeah.
making
So-
the sperm and egg meet.
Yeah, so fertilization happens outside the body, and then the eggs are implanted back into the mom.
So how did they get sick?
So from what I understand from the process of IVF at least is that usually you will need to fertilize a lot more eggs because the success rate of each egg, I can't remember the actual percentage, but you need at least 3 eggs to get a 33% chance or something. I can't
So
remember.
it's probably like around 33% that
Yeah.
the implantation will be
Works.
successful and a baby will develop.
like a single baby would develop from the 3.
So that's why I guess that's why fraternal quadruplets or like sextuplets are more common in
Yeah.
IVF, right?
Yeah, not really identical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can IVF babies be identical though? So like if I do IVF, can I get an identical twin or an identical triplet?
Yeah. And so like once you put the fertilized egg back into the womb, if it like spontaneously splits into 2 from the same egg, then they would contain the same genetic material and therefore they will be identical twins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as they implant differently at different sites.
So basically just what happens is the fertilization happens externally.
Yeah.
So speaking of external fertilization, here's a fun question, everyone. Can fishes be twins? So what do you think?
I honestly don't even know if like you can tell that a fish is twin. Like you have to
Like-
follow.
I guess you have to do
The only way is
PCR.
to
yeah.
So PCR is polymerase chain
Chain.
reaction.
Which you probably commonly heard of in the COVID era.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
If we are since we are living in the COVID era.
Or
But
like
what
the
is
past
PCR?
maybe.
So PCR is when you extract DNA, so genetic material from anything. Like so it could be from a nose swab, you can get it from tissue, and then you amplify that DNA to check what is the contents of the DNA. So I guess people wouldn't really PCR a fish. But what do you think in theory? Can fishes be identical? Because they are extant. Like, where do they implant? I'm so okay.
Do they get implanted? No, right?
So they just, but they're like,
It's all external.
It's all external.
so fishes basically get carried outside.
Yeah.
Do they have to? They have to be in contact with something, right? They can't just be suspended. And
The eggs. What? Did you watch Finding Nemo? Didn't that happen? Like in Finding Nemo,
it's
but what were the
external.
eggs attached to? Something. And then like the father just like releases the sperm and then like the
I
eggs.
don't know what version of Finding Nemo you watched.
Is that not Finding Nemo?
Pretty sure the eggs were fertilized beforehand.
did we not
Really?
see the fertilization?
Or maybe this is another species. I
don't-
can't remember.
I don't think that happened. Finding
yeah.
Nemo is PG dots. It's PG.
Basically, our animal biology is from watching Finding Nemo.
Or
And-
whatever.
Exactly.
And,
cartoon.
yeah, we're not really experts, if you can tell. Like, we're
We're-
kind of dumb.
We're still dumb.
Yeah.
So
Theories, guys?
anyway, so it's like the sperm fertilizes the egg out,
Yeah.
right?
Multiple sperms fertilize multiple eggs.
Yeah.
And it's like one egg to one sperm. So
Yeah.
like, do you think they like one fertilized egg can divide into two, like in the water, like for example for fishes?
If we are talking about twins and we're just talking about genetic similarity and how close they are, because it's like, we have siblings. All of us, unless you're only child. It doesn't matter. Like, if you have a sibling, then, you share similarities with their DNA, but you're not the exact same person.
Yeah.
You're not twins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that same goes for fraternal twins, right? They don't share the same DNA, but you have the same parents. And that's because of the combination of genes you get from your mom and your dad that's different. So if there is a circumstance where different eggs end up having the exact same genetic material, then I would say that, aren't they twin? As in, they're not exactly, I guess, twins, but
They're not twins, as in like from the developmental
Yeah.
standpoint, where they came from like one cell.
Yeah.
But they're twins in that they're identical
Genetic
in like
makeup.
genetic makeup.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my
But
question...
that is like super rare. I mean, like
Yeah,
It is rare.
infinitely rare.
even though
Because technically humans can have that too. It's
but
just
it's
rare.
Exactly.
super rare, and we don't give birth to 100 kids.
Does it happen?
Does it happen
Does
in the
it
wild?
ever happen?
I mean, it's rare in humans because we don't have 100 babies, right? But fishes have 100
Yeah.
And
eggs.
fishes have less genetic material than us.
Yeah.
So like,
So if
the
anything-
variation is less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Interesting conversation today. That was kind of tiring, but yeah. I don't know how you guys feel.
I like the fish question.
Yes.
I
Fish
like-
was just a throw in.
I want to see the version of Finding Nemo that
I really don't
Yes,
remember
maybe
where.
it's the director's cut.
Yeah.
Very clear in my head, but like
Are you sure it's Finding
Really
Nemo?
not.
Sure it wasn't a documentary.
I don't know. Maybe I added things to Finding Nemo.
Okay, so the question that we have to answer today is how do do identical triplets exist and how do they come about? And can IVF babies be identical? And can fishes be twins? Okay, welcome back. So this podcast episode, we were talking about odd number identical twins. So our first question is, do identical triplets exist? And how does it happen?
Yeah, so I looked into that. Identical triplets do exist. And actually, we were pretty spot on with our theories.
Really?
Yeah. So
Which
just
theory?
Both? The dark
But-
one and the...
yeah, the dark one and the not dark one.
Okay.
So just to recap a bit on how identical twins develop. So firstly, a single egg is fertilized by a single sperm, and then the egg divides, and ultimately they are implanted differently, forming two different embryos or babies.
Oh, embryos is just what the babies are called from the conception to the 8th week. That's just the biological term for it.
Yeah. So and those babies or embryos grow independently from each other. And interestingly, this twinning phenomena can occur after a week of fertilization as well. So
Oh,
yeah, but
After a week.
yeah, so after the egg is fertilized, within a week, twinning can happen
Still happen.
anytime.
Like
Yeah.
the splitting into...
Yeah.
identical.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be the first division.
Oh.
Yeah, it can be subsequent
But
divisions.
after the first week, isn't it like there's many divisions already?
Yeah, so I think it's dependent on the cell mass. The different, maybe just, but it's not entirely clear why.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why multiple, identical twins can happen. So the thing about that is there are three main prevailing theories on why twins or identical triplets exist. So first thing is one that we didn't really consider because we thought mitosis, meiosis always results in, or cell division always results in two daughter cells. But I mean, there is a potential for 3 daughter cells, although I'm not entirely sure how that happens. But that is a possibility that they are considering.
But okay, if there are 3, then don't you have to make 3 times the genetic material?
Yeah, exactly.
For it to be a perfect split? If not, the chromosomes are going to be split into 3.
Exactly, 3 wait. Not entirely clear. What?
Oh, so they didn't explain how mitosis could be
3.
forming 3.
Yeah.
But have there's evidence that it happened before?
I have no idea. They were very vague about it. But I think it's a shot in the dark kind of thing.
Oh,
But
so
it's just a phenomena that we haven't observed. Yeah. But then the next one is, I think, Dot's theory, which is that when the fertilized egg splits, the next split only so when the fertilized egg splits, that's 2, right?
Yeah.
So
and
then,
it's independent already.
Yeah, and it's independent. Then another subsequent split generated another twin, but only on one side of the lineage.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I don't know if you would know the answer, but so if after the first split and then there's a second split for one of the fertilized embryos, does those embryos develop slower then? Does it matter how early the split is? Because the cell mass would be bigger for the one that didn't split, right?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but what they do know is that twins and actually multiple pregnancies within the same pregnancy, multiple embryos. Fetuses in the same pregnancy is actually a lot more dangerous for not only both the babies but also the mom. That it can generate a lot of pregnancy related risks
like
diabetes, blood pressure. There's a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
So in fact, multiple pregnancies is not really something that's very desired, even though it's interesting. It's not the most ideal for either the parents or either the mom or the babies. Yeah. But going back to the theories on identical triplets, the last one was my theory, which was that quadruplets were first formed and then one of them got resolved. Yeah, or just magically vanishes, but a lot of things
maybe
that
just
occur.
not enough nutrients.
Yeah, just not enough
Yeah.
nutrients, and it dies off and it gets absorbed back into the body.
Yeah. So those are the 3 theories. And so identical triplets do exist, but they are exceedingly rare. So a few different studies quoted different things. It's either 1 in 100,000 live births or 20 or 30 in a million. But the point is that they don't really occur normally.
Actually, 20 or 30 in a million sounds very common. It's like in Singapore, then there would be
There should be
100.
100, right?
So don't you think the 1 in
1 in 1,000?
Yeah, but
It'll be like then there's
yeah, but that's
50 in Singapore.
and a global average, an estimated average.
Okay.
The whole statistics about how 1 in 25 people that you meet should have the same birthday as you.
Oh,
but you don't.
right. Okay.
no
did.
20?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a global average and not
Okay.
regional average. Something closer or more localized. Yeah. But but statistically it's also more less rare to get identical triplets from assisted reproductive techniques versus spontaneous. So basically stuff like IVF, we get more identical triplets compared to spontaneous conception, which is natural
But that's
conception.
expected, right? I mean, like when you talk about IVF.
No.
No?
We would think that
You're talking about identical
Yeah.
triplets.
Oh,
So-
which is still a spontaneous reaction.
that occurs supposedly after fertilization.
Oh,
Yeah.
after implantation into the womb? Or just after fertilization? So
fertilization.
they could be going in the petri dish and splitting from there.
Yeah, so maybe the cell somehow
Okay,
gets
so
split
maybe
up.
this kind of segs into mine, but we can go back to yours later. Do you have anything else?
Not much. I think we can move on for now.
Okay, so the segue into the second question is, can IVF babies be identical twins? Yeah, so assisted reproduction treatment, so ART. So for example, in vitro fertilization can result in multiple pregnancies.
Yeah.
So more so, I think in the past, maybe it was more common to implant multiple embryos because of the chances of it failing to implant or develop.
Yeah.
But recently, more and more doctors are considering single embryo transfers to avoid multiple pregnancies. So I think you went through some of the risks just now, but other risks associated with multiple pregnancies is fetal deaths, miscarriage, premature delivery, and low birth weight, which all kind of makes sense because if there are two fetuses in the same womb, you are competing for more of the nutrients, more of the space, everything. So, however, when a single embryo transfer is performed, some women still become pregnant with twins or triplets. So the statistics for this is the multiple pregnancies after single embryo transfers happen in about 1.6% of IVF. So I guess it is slightly more frequent than natural birth, like you were saying. So there's not really much to it, but I think from what I understand, it's not the embryo splitting in the petri dish. You transfer it into the womb, and then there is splitting in the womb. So
still a lot unknown about the how identical twins are formed.
Also because it's rare and it's less common than normal just single birth. So
for sure.
not as much research can be done just based on the sheer volume.
Always keep track of when we become pregnant, I guess. So
you wouldn't know that,
like the early stages, what happens. That's true.
Yeah, so IVF babies can be triplets. Okay, so on to our next question. Can fishes be twins?
Yes, can fishes be twins? Okay, so like based on majority of my findings, what actually pops out is not talking about like twins, but like conjoined twins. So they there's a lot of like evidences of like conjoined fishes. And let me just explain like how come they can observe this. So apparently like when like human pregnancies, there's a lot of environmental factors in the womb. There's a lot of factors that needs to be controlled. Really, the stars need to be aligned for a baby to form. Same for fishes, like they need the temperature of the water, the oxygen levels in the water, etc. all need to be a certain certain thing.
Optimal condition.
Yeah, optimal condition for it to grow properly. So apparently like it's easier to study and to observe like whether fishes become malformed, whether you see conjoined twins in fish farms. And talking about fish farms, let me just go back to my Finding Nemo theory to clarify first before I go more into like can fishes be twins.
Finding Nemo.
So like how come I thought Finding Nemo had this R-rated scene? It's more like cause I remember watching like a fish farm video of like salmon. Them like using, so farmers actually like to produce a lot of salmon because we all love salmon, right? They harvest the roe from like female salmon and they like put it in like a pail.
The roe being eggs.
Eggs, yes. And they just use the male salmon to like squirt like all the semen onto the roe.
Into a pail.
Yes. It's like just an orange. It looks like bubble tea, like orange.
Oh,
and
why did you say bubble tea?
And right now swirling bubble tea.
So they squeeze.
Yeah, they really
fish?
squeeze the stomach. Like I was watching this video. They squeeze the stomach of the male.
So it wasn't in
fish.
Finding Nemo, right?
Yeah, I just
Very different
inserted it
scene.
into Finding Nemo because like there's a lot of roe in the Finding Nemo scene. So I'm sorry about that, but yes, that was. Just to clarify, Finding Nemo is good for children. Okay, so back to our farm. Yes, so they find a lot of conjoined like twins.
So it's very
twin
common.
fish. It's not very common, but like maybe in like one
Pail.
no, I would say like one paper found like 8 in one go, 8 pairs of twins, like and it can be done in the lab also, like if you modify. And in fact, like some researchers, they actually like grow some of these conjoined twins just to study like how it is in the lab. By just tweaking the water conditions, there's a higher chance of producing like abnormal fetuses. So basically conjoined, we know like in humans, they are basically joined at a particular part of their body.
Generally the hip, right?
Is it?
For humans, I
humans.
guess, but for fishes, it's usually, I'm not sure like whether it's a particular place, but I mean the fish is so small, it's like almost the whole body is joined to each other.
Yeah.
And normally one would be bigger than the other, so the other one would be malformed. And it's like in humans, you're competing for nutrients and stuff like that, and maybe like one of the fetus gets resorbed because they don't have enough nutrients. Same for conjoined fishes, and usually they are not able to survive into adulthood. So how these were formed is basically like when there's one theory where like there's at the earlier stage, you form from one egg, you split, and then you form two separate individual fishes. But when it's the later stage of the pregnancy in a fish, these actually somehow fuse together. These two separate fish individuals somehow fuse together and cause conjoined twins.
So they're not identical then, because it's not
They're not splitting
zygotic splitting.
I wouldn't say they might be identical because it can just be like two fishes joining. The other theory would be like there's separate individuals and there's fusion and then there's resorption of parts that have been formed. Am I confusing y'all?
No, I was just thinking whether it can split, but it probably is super difficult to research that, right? Because the fish eggs are so small.
Yeah, and like I was thinking like why only conjoined twins come out. I mean conjoined twin fishes come out in most of my research is because it's don't fishes all look the same? Like it's so hard to be like, they are two separate fishes. Except when you probably, if you really want to study, you have to sequence the DNA of the fish. And actually, like, because I was looking at fish, I extended it mildly into like other animals and whether they can be twins. So apparently, like humans, there is this Irish wolfhound. There was one that was found to be identical in somewhere in Africa, I think, and they are known to be identical because they have the same DNA, so they probably sequenced it. Except that like in humans having different fingerprints between twins, these two wolfhounds had like different fur markings.
Oh,
so it's kind of cute. Like
they're identical, but then their fur markings are different.
Exactly, and you would think that they are different. It's like how you would think two fishes are different because.
So you wouldn't know.
Yeah, it's very hard unless you really
sequence
isolate.
1,000 fish.
Yeah, or like somehow you monitor them all.
Yeah,
and there's so many fish.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do we consider all the roe that was fertilized at the same time to be multiple pregnancies then? Because technically it is, right?
Yeah.
It's just that we don't know whether they are identical or not.
They are probably not identical.
Yeah. So can fishes be twins? Yes, but maybe not identical. So they just have a lot of fraternal triplets. I don't know, 100plets. We just made up a word.
I mean, if there can be conjoined twins, I think there can be real twins. It's just that it's not easily trackable, and that's why there's
too
no
expensive
data
and
not interesting. I mean, it's interesting, but it's not worth the
Yeah.
money to research. Research needs money.
Yes. Okay, I hope everyone learned something because I sure did. Okay, anyway, so identical triplets do exist.
Wow.
Yes. Cool. Thanks for listening.
Bye.